All right, so today we are diving into something that might seem like a huge contradiction, a real paradox from a classic Buddhist text. It's all about the Buddha's karma, or maybe lack thereof. We're going to look at this idea of a compassionate performance.
Okay, let's just get right to it with this question. It's a big one. You've got this fully enlightened being, right? Someone who is totally free from all karmic baggage. So, why would they still get hungry? Why would they get injured? Or even have people spreading nasty rumors about them? It kind of doesn't add up, does it? Was this whole thing an act? Well, as we're about to find out, the answer is, in a way, yes, but probably not in the way you're thinking.
So let's look at what the texts call the Buddha's mortal troubles.
I mean, look at this list. It doesn't exactly scream perfected being, does it? He gets slandered by this woman Sincha. He goes out for alms and gets an empty bowl. Nothing. He gets a splinter in his foot, a bad headache, and for 3 months, he eats horse feed. You look at all this, and you can't help but wonder, what's going on here? Was this just bad luck? Or maybe, was it some kind of old karma coming back to bite him? Was he still paying off some cosmic debt?
Well, the sutra we're digging into today shuts that idea down completely. It is crystal clear on this point. It says definitively, the Tathagata, that's another name for the Buddha, has no karmic hindrances. None. Zero. No old debts, no unfinished business, full stop. So whatever was happening, it was not punishment.
Okay, so if it's not karma, then what in the world is going on? The answer is this incredible concept, wisdom beyond karma, or what's known as skillful means.
Yeah, this idea is called upaya, and honestly, it's a game changer. Think of it like this. It's like a perfectly choreographed play. None of what happened was random. Every single action, even the ones that looked negative, were actually perfectly designed lessons, custom-tailored for the exact people who needed to see them. The Buddha wasn't suffering, he was demonstrating suffering to teach us how to deal with our own.
And the sutra gives us this fantastic analogy to help us get it. Imagine a brilliant doctor. He's perfectly healthy, right? But his patients are sick, and they're scared to take their bitter medicine. So what does he do? He takes a dose himself, right in front of them. Not because he needs it, but to show them, see, it's okay. This is how you get better. I'm with you. That's what the Buddha was doing.
Or here's another one. Think of a master calligrapher teaching a bunch of little kids how to write. He knows the alphabet backwards and forwards, of course, but he sits down with them and slowly says, A, B, C, right along with them. Why? He's meeting them on their level. He's showing them the way step by step. That's the Buddha. He's stepping into our world of suffering to lead us out of it.
Okay, so all manifestations are teachings. Let's break down a few of these examples and see how this actually worked in practice. This is where it gets really fascinating.
All right, let's start with this one, the horse feed. So there's a famine. Times are tough, and the Buddha and his 500 monks, well, the only food they can get is barley meant for horses. Now, from the outside, this looks pretty bad, right? Like a huge failure.
So, was this karma? Was this payback for something they did long ago? Nope, not even close. According to the text, this was a multi-layered, brilliantly executed teaching moment.
Check this out. This one single event accomplished 3 different things. It's like spiritual multitasking. First, those horses, they weren't just any horses. They were actually 500 bodhisattvas. By accepting their food, the Buddha created a link to them and helped set them free. Second, he had 400 monks who were really struggling with sensual desire. Making them eat this super coarse, plain food was the perfect medicine to cool those desires down. And third, and this is amazing, the Buddha's attendant Ananda tasted the food, and to him, it tasted like the most divine, delicious thing ever. The lesson? For an enlightened being, taste doesn't come from the food, it comes from the mind.
Okay, so what about when things get personal? A direct attack on his reputation. This story is famous. A woman named Sinkacha ties a wooden bowl under her clothes to look pregnant, bursts into a huge public gathering, and points right at the Buddha, accusing him of being the father. I mean, can you imagine the drama?
So what's the teaching here? Well, this is where you see the Buddha playing the long game. He wasn't just teaching the crowd that day, he was teaching every single one of his followers for thousands of years to come. He just sits there, perfectly calm, and endures it. He knew that his future monks and nuns would face all kinds of lies and accusations, so he created this powerful example. So that anytime in the future, when a practitioner is getting slandered, they can remember this story and think, hey, if it happened to the Buddha and he handled it with grace, then I can get through this too. It was an incredible act of planning for the future.
And what about straight-up physical pain? The scriptures say the Buddha's body was like a diamond,
totally indestructible. And yet, he gets a wooden spike through his foot. How does that even happen? Well, the text is clear. He let it happen. He used his own power to make it look like he was injured.
And why would he do that? Because it was an emergency intervention. See, in the audience that day were 20 men who were literally plotting to go kill their enemies right after the talk. The Buddha saw this, so he stages this injury and uses it as a jumping-off point to tell a story about his own past life where he killed a pirate to save 500 people. The guys planning the murder hear this, and it just stops them in their tracks. They're thinking, whoa, if the Buddha is showing the appearance of a consequence for an act that was actually meant to save people, what kind of horrible result are we going to get for an act based on pure hatred? It completely shocks them out of it. They repent on the spot, and that act inspires this huge wave of understanding through the whole crowd.
This whole idea of a compassionate performance goes even deeper. It actually extends to the Buddha's greatest enemy, his arch nemesis.
So let's talk about Devadatta. We all know him as the ultimate bad guy, right? The cousin who was constantly trying to one-up the Buddha, even trying to kill him. But this text just flips that whole story on its head. It suggests that in reality, Devadatta was a skillful means bodhisattva. He was an ally. Think about it. How do you show you have perfect patience if no one ever tries your patience? How do you demonstrate ultimate generosity if no one is there making impossible demands? Devadatta wasn't an enemy. He was the perfect scene partner. He created the exact situations the Buddha needed to show everyone what enlightenment looked like in action.
So when you put it all together, the big takeaway is this: nothing was a mistake. Every single apparent flaw, every struggle you read about, it was all part of the lesson plan. It was a perfectly crafted, compassionate performance designed to teach us all how to wake up.
And how powerful was this teaching? Well, the sutra tells us that just from hearing this explanation of skillful means, 72,000 beings had their minds totally blown. They instantly got it and attained the mind of enlightenment. Just understanding the why behind the Buddha's apparent suffering was enough to change everything for them.
So this kind of leaves us with a pretty big question for our own lives, doesn't it? If the Buddha's suffering was actually a form of compassionate teaching, what about our difficulties? Could we start to look at our own challenges differently? Not just as random, awful things that happen to us, but maybe, just maybe, as opportunities, as the raw material we can use to develop our own skillful means for growth, for patience, and for wisdom.